We can start, sir. We can start.
Okay, all right, all right. So so good evening all. I'm Dr. Neeraj Bhalla, and I welcome you all to this cardiology echo session once again. This is our first major launch session in the year 2021. And along with me is my young colleague, Dr. Bilal, who, if you remember from last year, has been a good support to us. Say hello to everyone, Dr. Bilal.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah. So Dr. Bilal is a dynamic young cardiologist from Kashmir, and he has been actively participating in setting up the didactics and taking care of many of the presentations. So I'll welcome everyone to ECHO, Cardiology ECHO, and what we are trying to do in this is to embody the ECHO principles, which are extension for by technology to improve community health outcomes. So this is a cardiology education initiative, and we have an audience which is all India. We have got many students, we've got many practitioners, we have many people who are interested in cardiology who attend our sessions. And the idea is to look for solutions that people in the field are facing that are real clinical problems that they come across. And as a group, we try to sit and try to find solutions to clinical problems, clinical issues, and also to share best practices. So that's the idea. And like I said, it's all learn or teach kind of case-based format. And we do it for 1 hour every second or third Friday in the evenings. And we hope that with this, we are going to be increasing our footprint and getting more and more people involved in this movement. If anyone is interested in knowing about ECHO, Anjali is representing the organization. You can be directly in touch with her. So a few ground rules. We are going to start with the case presentation today being done by Dr. Madhuri from Visakhapatnam. So welcome, Dr. Madhuri. And this is an interesting case, a multi-system problem. So we have as hubs, we have invited Dr. Manav Vadhavan, who is our director of hepatology, to give us his insights and his inputs. And together we'll all try to discuss and reach to a conclusion. We also have got a didactic presentation of a few minutes at the end, which will be done by Dr. Bilal. He has prepared a nice set of slides. Hopefully they will increase our understanding of the topic and see what is new, how we can treat these people in a better manner. So with this brief introduction, I'll hand over the mic or hand over the presentation to Dr. Madhuri. And anyone is free to jump in and ask questions, or you can put them in the chat box. But what we prefer is face-to-face. Everyone can ask questions. And if everyone puts on their videos, that will be very refreshing and nice. And Dr. Manav, whenever you need any inputs or anything, please feel free to come in at any time. Over to you, Dr. Madhuri.
Thank you, sir.
You can give a brief introduction about yourself, and then we can start.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Madhuri. I'm DM cardiologist working as assistant professor in Andhra Medical College based at Visakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh. I don't know whether you know the city or not. It's a very one of the smart cities now. So I would like to present a case of RA mass which we received at around 10 o'clock in the night one day with a brief history. I'll be introducing you now. So I would like to share the screen for the presentation.
Dr. Madhuri, let me give you a small aside. My father is a graduate of Andhra Medical College in Visakhapatnam.
Wow.
50 years ago.
Oh. Host, disable the participant screen sharing.
Ma'am, I have made you the co-host.
Okay. Thank you. So the RA mass challenges we faced in managing the case. Of course, we didn't manage it completely. We have transferred the case to gastroenterology. So initial problems, I'll let you know. So here we got a 60-year-old male who is a known case of chronic liver disease with portal hypertension. His HbS is hepatitis B positive case and a chronic alcoholic. He is actually referred from an outside hospital in view of RA mass visible on echo. The patient presented with complaints of increased yellowish discoloration of sclera, high colored urine, increased abdominal distension, increased shortness of breath on exertion since 15 days, for which he went to an outside hospital and was evaluated to some extent. On general examination, we had the patient had icterus, pedal edema, vitals, 92, pulse rate is 92 per minute regular. Um, uh, Blood pressure is 90/60, saturations are normal at room air. Briefly on examinations, the cardiovascular system didn't show much. Then lungs, normal vesicular blood sounds. On per abdomen, we had hepatomegaly. Ascites was there, gross ascites, varicose scrotal swellings were there. Um, uh, uh, he was already blood tests were done outside. Hemoglobin was 8.2. The main problem was platelet count 82,000. PTA was normal, APTT slightly prolonged.
Problem है?
So this was the ECG at presentation. No evidence of any increased RA pressures. No, not much of tachycardia. No evidence of S1Q3T3. I'm talking in lines of PT because we have the patient directly came with investigations to us. So I would like to share the echo, sir. Directly the videos of echo I'll share.
So we have a patient who has obvious signs of chronic liver disease, I think.
Yes, sir.
As you have presented, with the features of anemia and thrombocytopenia.
Yes, sir.
Presenting to you with an echo finding, essentially. Is that
Yes, sir.
what it was?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Did the
sir.
patient have any symptoms of any breathlessness, any hemoptysis, or any other such presenting or heralding signs?
No, sir. No. Patient was relatively hemodynamically stable. And nothing alarming or while presentation, sir, except
Okay,
for the
nothing
huge
alarming.
mass.
So, why was the echo done? Was it part of a routine because the patient was breathless, or anything? Any reason why?
Like that, sir. Like, and patient was evaluated outside. It might be a coincidental finding.
Okay.
Because with a huge gross ascites and all that, we usually expect this similar amounts of shortness of breath actually.
Hello.
Right. So that's what I was trying to make a point, that there was no clear-cut evidence of why there was no clear-cut reason to suspect any cardiac issues in this patient. This was
नहीं टिका नाम की ना
obvious features of decompensated liver disease, and for some reason,
वही
all right. Okay.
Can I raise a point?
Yes, please.
So can we just go back to the first slide, the history slide? I have a point to make there. So this guy has obvious evidence of portal hypertension.
Yes.
Right.
And
let's
his
see that slide, Dr. Madhuri. Let's see that slide and just go back.
I am having a problem. Yes. Now, yeah, am I changing the slides on your screen, sir?
Yes,
yeah.
Yeah.
So see this. Total 15 days history of decompensation.
Yes,
so this guy is an alcoholic with hepatitis B. He's running a chronic liver disease. And for 15 days, there is a sudden worsening. He's now developed jaundice. He's developed abdominal distension and shortness of breath on exertion. And that's the reason probably the echo has been done. So something has happened 15 days back or maybe 3 weeks back, which has led to this decompensation. And that's what we believe. So what happens in a liver disease patient which can cause this kind of presentation? The liver disease patients tend to block their blood vessels. It can be portal vein thrombosis. It can be hepatic venous thrombosis. Since abdominal distension is a major feature and jaundice has set in, and we also know that there is a echogenic mass in the RA. I would say that this guy has blocked his hepatic veins. And what you are seeing in the RA and the IVC is actually extending from the hepatic vein. That would be my hypothesis. We can go forward with this hypothesis.
So what you're saying is that some event has caused decompensation, and these people who are chronic liver disease are prone to developing hepatic or portal vein thrombosis as one of the reasons for decompensation, apart from other features that we know can cause decompensation in chronic liver disease.
So the reasons of hepatic venous, if you look at a RA mass coming from IVC from the hepatic vein, it is unlikely to be a thrombus. The thrombus will not extend like that.
Let's leave that discussion when we get.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So let's leave it here. Rather, we go forward and see what happens.
So I think if we can conclude that we must look for some features of causing decompensation
of the liver disease and try to correlate that with what we are seeing in the right atrium.
Also.
So these two events are probably linked. So this is something which happened and which you are seeing as a consequence in the right atrium.
Okay.
Agree with you, sir.
Dr. Madhu.
I'll continue with this, sir. I'll now share the screen showing the mass. So now I'm sharing the video. Is it visible, sir?
Yes, we can see. Can you make it full screen? Is this full screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, actually,
Yes,
we couldn't get a recording in the system. There is a problem.
So this is coming from your mobile phone or something?
Yes, sir. We were recording from our mobiles. So
for the benefit of everyone, can you just describe what chambers you're seeing on the echo and the findings with your pointer?
So now at the apex of the sector, we are the larger chamber. Wait, I'll freeze it and show you. Yeah, you can see my cursor, I guess.
Yes, we are seeing that.
Yeah, nicely. This is the LV. Okay, this is the transducer point. This E is the transducer point, and which is directed left, and this is a left ventricle, and we can see a RV which is not enlarged, and this is the left atrium, and this is the right atrium which is enlarged to some extent.
So there's a big mass which is filling the right atrium, which is not empty, unlike the left atrium. I think it's very clear that there is a big mass in the right atrium, which is filling probably the entire right atrium and impinging on the tricuspid valve also.
Yes, sir. I can show you some. I can show you this. This is the coronary sinus opening into the RA.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is not dilated. It's not much dilated as we expect. Okay. So now I'll share you the other video.
This is a subcostal view.
Yes, sir. This is a subcostal view.
Just run it and tell us about it.
Yeah, we can see the liver recurgencity and pleural effusion here. The rim surrounding the liver is a pleural effusion. We can see not much of enlarged hepatic veins, sir. The portal system, these are not dilated actually. See, at the end, we can see the mass filling this is the IVC, which is showing a echogenic mass. This not much clarity is there, but I'll try to show. This is the RA mass. Slowly, I'll show you the IVC opening into the RA here, this junction. This is completely, normally you have a black shadow, a black one, but here it is filled with the mass. That's why we can't see the actual IV joining the RA. This is the junction. the ending frame.
So if we may summarize, the liver has some coarse
ecotexture.
ecotexture.
Yeah,
The
seems to be
hepatic veins
enlarged.
there is some mild pleural effusion.
Yes, sir.
The hepatic veins are not dilated, and there is some mass or something extending from the IVC and then causing the entire RA to be filled up.
Yes, sir.
Is that a fair summing up?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Then this one. Where is the video? This is the portal IVC showing the huge mass which is extending into the RA.
Yes. So this is a much clearer view.
Yes,
This
sir.
is actually a dilated, large dilated IVC.
Yes, sir.
And you can see that that's the mass, and just to the right of that is the right atrium, and the mass is extending from the IVC into the RA.
These are the videos. I think these are sufficient, sir.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so the mass was around 14 to 14 to 23 mm in size, sir. Very occupying almost 90% of the right atrium, which is not obstructing the tricuspid valve. It is the tricuspid valve movement is normal, very mild TR is there. As you can see, the blood pressure 90/60, no hemodynamic compromise. So the PA forward flow is good. There is no RV dysfunction. So these are the things
Okay.
which the patient, as soon as he came, this is the scenario. So this is the liver lefty, the bilirubin 6.9 direct bilirubin. Sorry, I forgot to put the number. That is 6, I guess.
So let's open up the discussion. Anything else you'd like to tell us about the presentation, or this is the information that you have?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Prolonged APTT, platelet count is 82. No hemodynamic compromise, huge RA mass.
What is the APTT like?
84.3 seconds, sir. Control is 30.
84.3 seconds.
So more than.
And the PT?
PT is normal, sir.
1.65. 1.65. 21/30.
Yes.
All right. So let us discuss the case. Let's open the discussion. So if everyone has seen the case that in this patient presenting with recent chronic liver disease, presenting with recent decompensation, and incidentally an echo was done, which is finding that there is a large mass extending from the IVC into the RA. So what could be the possibilities, and what is this an emergency, or could this become an emergency, and what could be the possibilities, and how should we go about further evaluating and managing this patient? So this is a very tricky situation. So anyone would like to comment or come in and offer any suggestions, because I think this is not something that you'll find in any textbook that we can refer to, and this is a real issue that we might face. So anyone would like to come in and offer some suggestions or comments about how to go ahead? Dr. Salil, Dr. Garg is here with us. Salil, what do you think? Dr. Salil is a senior cardiologist. He's at Dehradun, Indresh Medical College in Dehradun. So we can start off with his comments, and anyone else would like to make any comments, please go ahead.
Shall I add something, sir?
We can have a portovenogram to show what the portal system is like, because ultimately portal vein is opening up in the with the inferior vena cava. So,
right. Sir, can you identify yourself, and if you can put on your video, it would be very nice, because
I'm Dr. K.S. Chadha.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening.
So Dr. Chadha is suggesting that we can do a splenoportogram. Dr. Manav, would you have any comments, or would you like to?
I'll not like to spill the beans. I think I have the diagnosis. I'll let you guys discuss first. Regarding the splenoportovenogram, nowadays we rely more on a CT scan doing that for us. We don't do a
Yes.
direct splenoportovenogram.
No. I was meaning a scan of that.
Yeah.
What are modalities available there? Of
Mhm.
course, no, all these scans, no invasive scans I used to do when I was a registrar, but nobody does it now. I know that. No, these are all imaging techniques which tell us. So was that done? I was just asking. You
No,
can
sir.
have. We can have some information from that.
Right. So what could be the findings in this? You would like to see a thrombus, or you'd like to see what could be the what would be the?
Well, though the most of these people they have tend to bleed. That will show us about the bunches of veins which arise. Because most of the time we see collaterals. You see, it will give us fair amount of idea what is happening with the portal system.
Okay. Good suggestion. Valid suggestion.
Could it be a thrombus
done?
originating from IVC and extending into RA? A large thrombus?
Yes, Dr. Madhuri, what do you think? Could this be a
Sir,
thrombus?
actually, the problem is the patient presented at night. For all these investigations to be done and get reported will take time. As usual, the DD for huge RMRs will be all thrombus, myxoma, mets, primary tumors. All this we have in mind. But immediately at the time of presentation, what we need to do is the main question, because we don't want him, if it is a thrombus, to land in a pulmonary thromboembolism if it gets embolized. That's the main concern at presentation. So it could be anything, sir. Tumor, because it can be a met or a primary or a thrombus.
So I think thrombus is a very strong or distinct possibility, and as an immediately potentially life-threatening problem, we must keep that in mind and try to exclude or treat or do something. Dr.
Yes,
Bilal?
sir. I'm sorry. Actually, I didn't realize that I was on mute. I would think that this is more of a thrombus, and maybe an imaging would be a good idea, sir.
What kind of imaging, Salit, you think will pick up a thrombus, or what do you think? How
So maybe a CT angio in this case.
CT angio, would it differentiate a thrombus from a tumor?
Yes. Well, I don't know why not. Well, I think it should, sir.
Okay. Yes, Manav. Very important. We are waiting for you, because.
Can I say something, sir?
Of course, you can always say something. Who is this? Please identify yourself.
Sir, Seema, sir.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Seema. Of course. Please, go ahead.
Sir, like when I saw the info first, the thought immediately came to my mind was that this is a thrombus in the IVC extending into RA. Okay. Now, the Vichos triad that I sent you in the early morning in the group, the purpose was this triad was, if we go through that triad and see the causes, there is no evidence of anastasis here. There is no evidence of vessel injury here. And the third is evidence of thrombus, hypercoagulability. The last point in the hypercoagulability is malignancy. So if you take the history of cirrhosis, because this patient had cirrhosis, when I looked back and I thought, acha, patient is of cirrhosis, then I thought probably it is a tumor thrombus.
Right. I think good analysis. Yes, Manav, please.
So a single investigation, if you have to ask me for this patient, that will be a triple phase CT of the liver, which covers the IVC and the right heart. That will give you the diagnosis.
Okay.
If you want to have serum biomarkers, get alpha fetoprotein and PIVKA2 done.
Okay. So tell us what we'll look for in a triple phase CT, since we don't, as cardiologists, we don't do this very often. And
so liver, it is unlikely to be a thrombus, as I said previously. If you see something, the background is a cirrhotic liver. There is an acute decompensation in last 15 days, and now you see a thrombus which is traveling from the IVC into the right atrium. So I would put my money on a liver tumor.
On a liver tumor.
Which is either invading directly into IVC or going through the hepatic vein into IVC and reaching the right atrium. That is what I'll put my money on. Now the other possibility is a thrombus. But why should a thrombus arise in such a situation? This guy has a prolonged APTT. This guy had a prolonged prothrombin time.
He's a bleeder, not a clotter.
Yeah, so he's a bleeder, not a clotter. It is unlikely that he'll form such a big thrombus which goes through the hepatic veins into IVC and into the right atrium. So that is a pointer against, but obviously you need to rule that out also because there is a differential. So why do we need a triple phase CT in these cases? The liver tumors have a beautiful characteristic. It is very peculiar for the liver tumors to pick up arterial phase enhancement. So triple phase
question I would like to ask.
Let him finish. Okay. Why don't you finish, then we'll go.
So in a triple phase CT, what you do is you inject contrast and you take the imaging at 3 points. The first point is when the dye has only reached the arteries. It has not entered the portal vein. That is called the arterial phase. That is done at around 20-30 seconds after injection in the peripheral venous system. Then you do a second imaging at around 50 seconds to 60 seconds. At that time, you expect the portal vein to fill up. And then finally, you do at 80 to 90 seconds where you expect the hepatic. This is right. So the liver tumors will pick up contrast from the artery before the liver parenchyma has enhanced. So they'll glow up in the arterial phase. So in the portal venous phase, it will be an equilibrium phase. So liver also will pick up contrast and the tumor also will pick up contrast. So it will become same as liver density. And as the washout happens, the tumor will still retain contrast. So the tumor will empty faster. So you will see a hypodense. So that is a classical feature of a primary liver tumor, which you will see on a triple phase CT. The triple phase CT will also give you whether the hepatic veins are involved or not. It will also give you an idea about the extent of hepatic vein involvement, IVC involvement, whether it's a tumor coming from liver at all or it is something else. If it is a thrombus, it will not enhance in any phase.
Right. So that's great.
That single investigation should give you whether it is a thrombus or a tumor. If it is a tumor, it will tell you whether it's a liver tumor or some other tumor. So that is why one investigation will be a triple phase liver.
Fantastic, fantastic insight. Thank you so much. This is something that's beyond our realm of knowledge and information. And without this input, I think we would not be able to make any headway about this. As cardiologists, we keep thinking something in the IVC, something in the RV, it has to be thrombus, it has to be thrombus. Am I right, Dr. Madhuri?
Yes, yes.
So this is what.
I totally agree because in a cirrhotic liver, you are more likely to have a hepatocellular carcinoma, and metastasis, can take place. It could be a metastatic kind of thing, which is probably reached there in the atrial wall.
Sir, but just one question. With a mass which is growing like this, wouldn't the patient be extremely sick?
So
you are talking about a mass which is growing from the liver into the IVC, into the RA.
Probably slowly growing thing, it is not a sudden kind of a thing. If a person gets a sudden block of right atria, he will have all the features. That's why I was insisting on portovenogram. What way you see, once you see the structure, the vasculature of the portal vein and the hepatic circulation, you will get a lot of information. Rather, what is after all, this has come through the vessels only. The metastasis has occurred there because of the vessel. So I think that is how we have to go, because there is no one test which is going to tell us. It is all things put together will tell us, like alpha fetoproteins, all these tests, these tests can be carried out, and this is how we have to reach the diagnosis. But as such, since the person is not come with an emergency kind of a thing, so I think we'll have to work up the patient before we make a diagnosis.
Sir, can hepatocellular carcinomas also give rise to thrombotic occlusions? I think they can, isn't it?
They can. A liver cancer is a procoagulant state. We are known to have systemic thrombi also. So that's the reason I said that a thrombus has to be ruled out, although it will be lower down in the differential in this case.
My question is to you, sir. Actually, how much percentage can they get embolized? Are there any studies like that?
If it's a tumor, are you asking if it's a tumor? how much can
If
they
it is a
embolize?
HCC extending from IVC into RA, what are the likely chances of getting embolus? That seems to have a well-defined mass actually.
So it's not an embolus. I would say if it is a HCC, it is continuing from the liver into the right atrium. It is not an embolus.
No,
It is
sir,
a
not like that.
continuation
Not
from
like
the
that.
liver.
Any fragment of the tumor, can it get embolized or something?
It can, although it's a very rare occurrence. See,
Yeah,
the invasion of HCC into vessels is very well known, but that forming a RA mass is very less described. It is not common. If you are looking at an uncommon condition, it is very difficult to comment how often can you have an embolus from that, but it is
yes,
possible.
that's what I'm
The
asking.
answer to
Whether
your
they're
question is-
reported or not, I'm asking.
Yeah.
Dr. Bilal, you wanted to make a
So
point?
my question to Dr. Madhavan was, this patient as labeled as a chronic liver disease should have been bleeding diastasis rather than a coagulant state. So, but this patient again is a hepatitis B positive also. That is a
Agreed.
procoagulant state. Why not a thrombus rather than a liver mets or a liver mass that is invading into RA?
See, thrombus forming this big
And
masses
this,
are not.
this acute decompensation might be because the RA is getting occluding. So the preload of left heart is getting down. So this
I completely,
might be huge.
yeah. So Dr. Bilal, what you're saying is right. The possible decompensation is because of RA and IVC occlusion. The probability of a thrombus causing that is very low. So in our own clinical experience, if we see the thrombus will cause portal venous obstruction, we don't see hepatic venous thrombi causing obstruction, and especially invading and going into the IVC and RA, that is very uncommon. It will embolize before that. The thrombus don't form a continuous sheet the way tumors can form.
Right.
So that is a pointer being against. That is a pointer against a thrombus here. But yes, it is possible. It is possible. And your contention is absolutely correct that the decompensation here is because of RA and IVC obstruction. But that
we do not have the CT pulmonary angio, or we do not have anything regarding the pulmonary thromboembolism evidence of that. Rather,
No, so
we don't have any ultrasound showing any liver mass or liver this solid tumor.
So your ultrasound will show a liver mass. If it is a liver mass, it will show. I said if I have to ask one investigation.
That is the final investigation. We
Yeah.
can differentiate
But
whether
yes,
it's a tumor or a
the
mass.
preliminary investigation for all liver-related lesions is a liver Doppler. A Doppler of the liver will tell you the portal venous status, the hepatic venous status, and whether there is a tumor inside or not. Obviously, it has to be done by not a routine radiologist, somebody who's used to seeing liver day in and day out. So that is always the first investigation. That's the reason I said if I have to ask a single investigation, that will be CT. But preliminary investigation is always an ultrasound. Please, I agree with you. You're right.
Any reason why the coagulation profile is so deranged with the intrinsic coagulation, that is the APTT, rather than the PT-INR being more deranged, which is what we might expect in.
Sir, a PT-INR of 1.65 is reasonably deranged in these patients.
No, I accept that, but an APTT of 84 is really deranged.
Yeah, that's right. So the thing, sorry. Okay, sorry, I lost the connection. The thing here is all the procoagulant factors are made in the liver, most of them, 80% of them. Now, which one is made more and which one is made less, there is no way to predict. So you will have situations, you will have a very high APTT and less high PT. On the other hand, you may have a situation, you have a very prolonged PT and a very mildly prolonged APTT. That is individual based. That is not, you can't draw conclusions from that. So more importantly, despite having a prolonged APTT and a prolonged PT, you can still have a procoagulant state. Because antithrombin 3, protein C, protein S, they are also made from liver. So you may have a situation that you have a prolonged prothrombin time, but the protein C, protein S are further low. So it makes a procoagulant state. So that is how liver behaves.
Right.
So despite a prolonged prothrombin time, you may actually be in a procoagulant state.
Right.
Sir, I have a question. Sir, if this is found to be a thrombus with this kind of coagulation profile, how would you like us to manage for this if it is a thrombus?
So, Dr. Madhuri, we have got some, Dr. Bilal has some, information on this, that how do you manage? Obviously, pharmacologically managing this with anticoagulation or thrombolysis is going to be extremely risky in such a patient, because how the balance is going to tilt is going to be. So we
Directly
put some
exposed.
thought into it, and those are going to be, we'll be discussing how to manage a thrombosis that might be life-threatening in this scenario, what we can do. So I think Dr. Bilal has a presentation which will make us, somewhat more informed. Right. So should we proceed to, if there are any other, if there are no other discussion points, anyone else would like to raise any questions? I think this has been extremely illuminating, how to approach such kind of a problem in these patients. So if anyone has any other points to raise or any questions, if not, then we'll proceed to Dr. Bilal's presentation, which is going to be a twofold presentation. One is on masses in the heart. That is going to be how, from a cardiologist perspective, how do we look, or what are the masses in the heart that we can look for? And the second part is going to be what Dr. Madhuri's question was, that what are the technologies that we have that can help us to manage a large life-threatening thrombus in a scenario where you are finding it difficult to give anticoagulant or thrombolytic. All right, okay then, Dr. Bilal. This one? Yeah.
As all we have discussed for the last half an hour regarding the RA mass, whether it's a tumor or a thrombus, that has to be differentiated with the investigation. As sir has told, the triple phase CT will be the best to differentiate. So we'll see what is the incidence of involvement of this cardiac involvement of masses. So if metastatic is 20 times more common than the primary cause. So metastasis from liver or gut or any other organ is very highly common than the secondary ones, than the primary ones. So the primary ones can be benign. Most of them are benign, 75%, and they can be malignant, 25%. So myxomas, the most common ones, can occur in the left side of the heart. Most commonly, they can occur on the right side of the heart also. They can be rhabdomyomas, fibromas, a list of lipomas, angiosarcoma. These are the malignant ones. And the secondaries are from the breast and the lungs, liver. They are most common causes of the masses in the heart. So tumors or masses, so we classify them as they can be constitutional or what we call as systemic from the other systems. They can be embolic from the lower down gut or the limbs, or they might arise from the heart. If we see the masses which arise in heart, we see devices we put from the right side of the heart, the leads, they entering to the right atrium, right ventricle. Sometimes they get infected, and sometimes they might present as cardiac embolic masses there in the attached to these device leads. They can be secondary or metastatic diseases, and symptoms they might present as a constitutional symptom like fever or some body aches. They sometimes might be catastrophic or life-threatening, creating pulmonary thromboembolism, or sometimes they might be incidental findings on echo, seeing these masses in left or right side.
Sudden cardiac death.
Sudden cardiac death, if they have a huge, such a thrombus, if gets dislodged, create a saddle thrombus in the bilateral pulmonary arteries and give a certain death to the patient. So manifestations that we see, they can be primary tumors to the endocardium. We are more concerned with the endocardial tumors which are inside the heart. They can lead to obstruction, they can lead to occlusion of the pulmonary arteries, they can lead to sudden death. So there can be misinterpretations. There can be some cardiac structures which can be misinterpreted as masses. Their overgrowth or hypertrophy can give us misinterpretation of masses. So if we see the left side of the heart, there are certain things that can be misinterpreted as masses on echo, or any other investigation like MRI or CT. They can be thickened papillary muscles, they can be webs, they can be prominent apical trabeculations in the left side of heart, they can be aneurysms, they can be thick or dense calcifications, which can give appearance of a mass rather than they are just mimickers. So what we are more concerned on in this case was the right side of the heart. If we see the right ventricle, there is a big muscle thick band that is called the moderator band, which differentiates RV from the LV. They can be thickened or calcified papillary muscles. They can be fatty tricuspid annulus, or there can be pacer wires. What we already discussed, they can be leads of the pacemakers or the devices we present day have. So these normal variants of mimickers have to be differentiated from the masses in the right or left side of the heart. So if we see, this is the IVC, this is the eustachian valve. This gives appearance of something hanging in the IVC. Might be a mass, but these definitely are normal structures, maybe appearing some with some abnormal appearances, thickened or calcified. So if we see this dumbbell-shaped lipomatous hypertrophy seen in obese patients. So there can be septal aneurysms, which can give to appearance of masses or aneurysms. This is the moderator band. This is the thick moderator band. This in the RV. So this gives appearance of a RV mass. These are Lembel's excretion in aortic appearances. This is less concerned with this case. So benign cardiac masses, benign, which are more common, 30% of all primary cardiac tumors are myxomas. So they
classically arise from the fossa.
They arise from the fossa valves, protrude into the atrium, and may intermittently cause obstruction. They are just more common in 80% in left side of the heart, left atrium.
Most of the dramatic echoes that we see are usually myxomas that are found floating here and there. And everyone has seen movies of that.
So these are 83% on left side of the heart, less common on the right side, but we are concerned right now. So this is the transesophageal echo showing a myxoma. This looks like a thrombus or a mass in the this left atrium. So they might give some syndromes, Lamb, Neem, and these all syndromes can be presented with myxomas. So primary cardiac tumors are very less than the secondary ones. It's around 15%. They can be sarcomas, which arise from the cardiac muscles, very less commonly. Secondary tumors are more common, having either they might be hematogenous spread, or they might have a direct invasive spread, as we saw in this case. If we see it as a direct invasion from liver to the IVC to the RA, occluding the
tumor growth from into the vena cava. This is our case.
Tumor growth into this RA from vena cava. So malignant tumors can arise metastasized from lungs, breast, liver, renal, esophageal, or other structures from the whole body. So management. So what we are more concerned with this case, if we take it as a thrombus or a malignancy, management in case of thrombus can be medical or surgical. So medical, we have been dividing it into the systemic or the conventional thrombolysis we were doing earlier, or we can give some limited doses of thrombolysis that might be.
You come to the
catheter guide.
You come to managing if this is a thrombus, then what should be, how should we manage?
This is the management of a thrombus, huge thrombus in IVC and right side of heart. Systemic thrombolysis or a catheter guided limited thrombolysis. We have nowadays advanced thrombus aspiration system, that is an FDA approved Penumbras Indigo mechanical thrombectomy system, through which we put a catheter and just aspirate the thrombus with a machine aspirator. And there can be surgical management, that is opening of the right side of the heart and taking out the clot and resuturing this right atrium. So this our main concern will be, because we are on off doing this systemic thrombolysis or catheter guided thrombolysis.
So in this particular patient with this coagulopathy, then usually any kind of thrombolysis is going to be very hazardous, very high risk for bleeding. And if we have such a large mass in the RA, which is likely to embolize, we need to actively remove this rather than give anticoagulants or wait for that. So we've got this new device which is available now with us. Go to the next slide. This is the Penumbra system, which has got a mechanical thrombectomy extraction device. You can show how it works.
Yes, this, if we see, this is the system, Indigo system, where we have a same as we have some suction machines which suck the aspirates from the trachea.
So it has got 5 parts. It's got a pump over here. This is the motor and the pump. It has got a canister to receive the thrombus. It has got this high pressure tubing with on and off over here, which connects to this catheter. This is the main catheter, which is braided, and this is inserted through a sheath into the vessel which contains the thrombus or the chamber. And this final thing is a device which you can move in and out to fragment the thrombus. Otherwise, thrombus tends to clot this aspiration catheter. So you can use this. This is known as a separator.
Clean the hub and
yeah. So you can use this to fragment the thrombus. So this is the technology that may be most appropriate to use in patients like we have over here. And we have the system in our hospital. We used it quite successfully in removing large amounts of thrombus from veins and from. It can also be used as a treatment for pulmonary embolism with large bore catheters. These devices are 6, 8, and 12, but we've used them as yet mostly in the iliac and the leg veins to remove large amounts of thrombus. So go back. So a little bit of theory about this. Yeah.
This is the classification. With this huge thrombus, we just have been worried regarding the catastrophe, that is pulmonary embolism. So the management would have been either giving some thrombolytics. That we see the patient is having a deranged coagulation profile. We cannot give any thrombolytic. So the manual aspiration with syringe is cumbersome. That is not effective, not efficient, and the catheter gets blocked now and then. So it requires a definitely a different system which aspirates regular aspiration. That is the Penumbra system which we have discussed. This has a motor which generates some pressure, negative pressure, and this has a catheter which has some mechanical braided which splits and aspirates the clot.
Right. And yeah, so these are the components of the. You can make a negative pressure of up to 30 millimeters of mercury, which is a very good aspiration or suctioning pressure. And these are heavy duty catheters also, which we can remove the thrombus. With mechanical aspiration using a hand syringe, the rapid drop off because you are unable to sustain that pressure for a long time. But with this mechanical device, you are able to sustain a full sustained vacuum to extract it. There is some clinical trial also you can talk about.
So this is the EXTRACT-E trial, which has shown this procedural. So it was to evaluate the safety and efficacy of this aspiration thrombectomy system in patients with acute pulmonary embolism. So without the use of thrombolytics.
98%, more than 98% did not receive any intraprocedural thrombolytics. And there's a very high reduction of RV to LV ratio at 48 hours. So because of this trial and because this is dramatic, now this has become thrombolytic therapy. And look, even in patients who do not have any bleeding disorder underlying, there is a major bleeding complication within 7 days of more than 10%. So this is a very important subset that we'll be able to avoid in this group of patients. So that is something that we can consider in this patient, and this is something new. We thought that we'll try to bring this to the forum and share what might be in this patient the best practice if this turns out to be a thrombus. Right. So presentation is over. Anyone would like to make any comments or like to add anything? We're very happy to.
What was the diagnosis made ultimately? What was the lesion found in the right atrium?
So I think Dr. Madhuri, we are not. Can you tell us, Dr. Madhuri, did you find? Can you enlighten us? What is the further workup? What happened finally? Yeah, Dr. Madhuri, you're silent.
Yes, sir. I'm sharing the screen, sir.
Yeah, full screen, please.
Yes. Yeah. It's actually multiple lesions in liver, and one of the lesion in segment 7 and 8 is extending into the IVC and through the middle hepatic vein, extending superiorly into the right atrium.
Right. So I think Dr. Manav was right. This is tumor hepatocellular carcinoma extending into the RA.
So now what to do, sir?
Yes. Now you have to treat it as hepatocellular carcinoma. You have to treat that only.
No, can I comment on that, sir?
Yes, yes.
And obviously, we need to treat the hepatocellular carcinoma, but the problem here is that this is actually a metastatic hepatocellular carcinoma now.
Yes.
So you have a bad liver disease, you have a tumor which is multicentric, and one of the tumors is invading into IVC and right atrium. So usually for a hepatocellular carcinoma with this kind of liver disease, the treatment is transplant. But here you cannot offer this patient a transplant. So you have to do something to reduce the size of the tumor in the RA and the IVC and probably make it non-viable. The only thing you can offer this guy is radiation for the tumor outside the liver. So if you do radiation for the tumor inside the liver, he's already decompensated. He'll develop liver failure and he'll die. So this is a very touch and go situation. So you would somehow like to make the tumor outside the liver non-viable and then assess whether this guy can actually undergo a transplant or not, because he's a decompensated liver disease. He cannot have any other treatment. So it's a very tricky situation. Most of these kind of patients will not make it despite what we do. But I think that's the best way forward. Radiate the IVC and the RA, assess for non-viability, and then assess for transplant.
Then I think I have got my answer. Thank you, sir.
Right. So
thank you, sir.
So I think, this case illustrates what are the best practices and what is the benefit of the ECHO platform, that we have somebody from Visakhapatnam who's faced a clinical problem, and all of us have been able to, sit and discuss threadbare what could be the possibilities, the investigations, what is the way forward and how to manage this patient. So I hope, Dr. Madhuri, you found that the session, and without this multidisciplinary effort, I don't think it's possible. So this is what I say that, ECHO is a unique platform, and I encourage more and more people to bring their clinical issues to us. We have access to, experts from all specialties who can make us wiser. And we must thank Dr. Manav for, enlightening us extremely knowledgeably about a situation that was puzzling and tricky for all of us, and giving us great insights really. So thanks a lot, Manav. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just,
The pleasure is all mine.
I would like to make just one point. I would like to make. I'm Dr.
Yes,
Arvind.
please. Yes, please.
Dr. Vadham, sir, wouldn't you leave aside the option of offering liver transplant to this patient at all? I would feel it is rather contraindicated because he's got already limited life expectancy because of the tumor metastasizing into involving the heart and IVC. So only offering palliative treatment to the patient, the radiation, and then the possibility. Do you really see the possibility of a liver transplant in such a scenario? I would rather
Rarely, sir.
I
Rarely.
would differ. I would differ. I think let him have a peaceful life, whatever he has.
I agree with you, sir. I completely agree with you. The possibility of us getting him to transplant is less than 10%, no matter what we do. So
Yeah.
theoretically, we can discuss everything. Practically, this guy is gone.
Yeah, yeah. Let him be peaceful. If he cannot afford a treatment, I mean, which will only give him complications only. I mean, yeah, radiation is okay. Yes, that's right.
Palliative radiation.
Thank you, thank you.
So one more question to Dr. Balla, sir. Sir, what is the cost of this Penumbra system, sir?
Yeah. So the Penumbra, the motor is a one-time purchase. The canister and the high pressure tubing costs about 30,000, and the aspiration catheter and the fragmenter, that together costs about 1,90,000.
Altogether 2.2. This
But all the
motor,
others
sir?
are reusable. All the others can be cleaned and reused, really. So it's about, and I asked the company people also. They said the fragmenter is optional. You can use a 038 J-tipped guide wire and move that up and down. That works well. So around 1.6 is what we are doing. Around 2 lakhs. All right. But in large thrombi, we have used this in a post-COVID case. We could entirely extract the thrombus and send the patient home who had a huge DVT low burden from the common iliac down into the popliteal vein. Everything we could clear in 1 day's time and send the patient. So it's very dramatic. It's worth using. You do not need to use any filters with it because you're extracting the clot. It's going downstream rather than moving upstream. So an extremely useful device to have in your armamentarium. All right. So if there are no other points and all, I'll thank everyone. Now there is a feedback form which will be available. I think the ECHO people will put that up. Just take a minute or two to give feedback as to how the session was and what you'd like to do in future, or anything else you'd like, any other inputs. And I think this is the best example of how ECHO works to bring solutions to real life clinical problems. And I'll encourage everyone who's attending that please, use the forms that we have, or just discuss with me, or send any queries on the WhatsApp group that we have about clinical issues, so that we can make this program, more useful to more number of people. All right. So with that, I thank everyone's participation, and hope to see you all again in the next ECHO sessions, which once we plan, we will. And a big thank you to Dr. Manav Vathavan once again.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the opportunity.